Hi, my name is Larry Newman. I'm an attorney in Ithaca, New York. Our practice concentrates and focuses on DWI and DWAI drugs defense in the upstate region of New York. Today, the question comes from Lance. He's a former client of mine. He's asking, what about people that are pulled over that are on prescription drugs and they get charged with a DWAI drugs charge? Now, there's a couple of parts to this. Number one is there's tons of people, a lot of people, probably 90+% of people are on some type of drug at any given time. Some drugs are for pain, some drugs are for muscles that are too tight or spasming. Some drugs are helping with your psychological problems, but many of these drugs can also cause impairment. But we hope that over the course of time that someone is on a prescription drug, that they get to just a therapeutic level of the drug and they're able to function. That's the whole key here with all of this, is that people should be able to function normally even if they are on a drug. Just because you're on a drug doesn't mean you're impaired by the drug. So let's get that out of the way. Many people on drugs, not all of them are impaired by the drug. So why did the police pull you over? I guess the most common scenario that we see is when there's a car accident and someone's acting weird or funny. And this happens quite often when they're taking drugs. Most of the time, there's multiple drugs involved, or they've taken too much, or they've mixed some drugs that probably shouldn't have been mixed, or shouldn't have been mixed in the quantity, or they're not used to the drug yet, and they get pulled over for a car accident. That's the most common scenario if you're getting pulled over for the suspicion of DWAI drugs charges. And if they do a blood test, if you submit to a blood test, they find out that that drug or drugs are in your system, but that doesn't necessarily mean or prove that you're impaired by the drug. The way that you're going to have to prove impairment, and this is largely subjective, is they're going to look at you and they're going to talk to you and they're going to watch you walk and they're going to watch you talk and they're going to watch you act. And if you're showing that you have problems communicating, problems understanding directions or instructions, or you have problems going back and forth with communications, that's the first thing they're going to notice, because with a DWAI drugs charge with impairment due to a drug or even alcohol, they need to prove two things. They need to prove physical and mental impairment. So if you're functioning great here and you have no problem answering questions, have no problem following directions, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to prove that you're impaired mentally and physically by the drug. But if you fall out of the car, if you can barely put two words together, if you're not understanding what they're saying, but there are physical problems that can cause people to have inability to walk or inability to talk or inability to do a lot of these things. So we need to separate out the people that have been hurt in a car accident from people that are legitimately impaired by the drugs. And this is where we get into subjective versus objective. Objective, yes, they're going to be able to prove or say that you're on a drug. Whether that drug has impaired you, that's when we get into the very subjective issues of what one person's opinion is. Remember, it's a police officer's opinion a lot of the time with these DWI cases and DWAI drugs cases. Just because you have a drug in your system doesn't necessarily mean that you're impaired by that drug. And with prescription drugs, it becomes more difficult sometimes to prove or defend the cases, because they're going to say that you're having difficulty walking, difficulty talking, difficulty thinking, having all these things, and then they're going to be able to, if you submit it to a blood test, show that you have these drugs in your system that can impair those functions if they're prescribed or used in a dosage or used in a way that they weren't intended to. And that's the other crucial difference here. But if you're on a therapeutic dose, and we're proving that you're on a therapeutic dose for you, it's really hard to say based upon a dose in your system that that dose has caused these problems, because drugs act differently with every single person. And every case is in its own little bubble, because everybody is different. Nobody takes the same drug and feels the exact same way at the same time. Some people have been on drugs or have been using these prescription drugs for many, many years and are very used to, are able to function very, very well, even with using much higher levels of drugs than other people that don't take any drugs, because your body gets used to it. It's called tolerance. So I hope I answered the DWAI drugs question. Yes, you can be charged with DWI prescription drugs, but whether they can prove that you're impaired by the drugs and the impairment caused you to operate the car unsafely, that's a crucial distinction on these cases. If you have a question about your DWI case or DWI drugs case, please give us a call. We can evaluate it, tell you what your options are. You can fill out a form on our website, shoot us an email, or you can give us a call. And thanks for watching this video.